Shalom. This is Ron Warren with the Nuggets of the Torah. This week's teaching is the 5th parsha of Deuteronomy and the 48th parsha of the Torah, and it's called Shoftim, which means judges. Compared to the other 5 books of the Torah, Deuteronomy is a confusing book, and here's why. Genesis is a story. Exodus and Numbers continue that storyline. Leviticus, although it moves from the story, gives us the legal processes of living with God in the midst of the camp. But how do you handle Deuteronomy? Here's the facts. There are 34 chapters in Deuteronomy, and chapters 12 to 26 covers many laws. And this is the reason we know Deuteronomy in English as the second law of the Torah. This parsha is one of 3 that represent these instructions or laws. These instructions started in last week's parsha, Reah, and will continue through this week's parsha, Shoftim, and the next 2 parshas of Kitshizah and Kitavo. Most people don't realize that they're looking at bookends. In Deuteronomy chapter 11, Moses says, "Behold, I say before you that this day is a blessing and a curse. God gives you the blessing if you follow the commandments, and he curses you if you stray from the path that he has set before you." Now, this forces a question. What are the actual blessings? It does not say. However, it continues with these words. When you get to the land, you do this ritual, where you go give the blessings on these mountains. And then the text will then tell you the location of these mountains, across from the Jordan, toward the setting of the sun, and Canaan across from Gilgal. But not a trace of what the blessings and the curses are. To understand the blessing and the curses, you must go to Deuteronomy 27. And it's here that the blessings and curses event is explained. Now, what exists between the chapters 11 and 27 are the instructions or the laws to receive the blessings and the curses. You know, God's greatest prophets worried continually about telling people what they believed God told them. They often had doubts about it if they were correct. And they wondered if what had entered into their mind was divine in origin. Please understand, while being a prophet is a great and honorable thing, they load it with danger and difficulty. It is not something to be sought, and telling someone what you believe to be a word from the Lord is no trifle thing. And the Bible's prophets are the greatest examples. Moses was addressing the people about these commandments from God. And right in the middle of his speech, Moses takes a break from the commandments and spoke to them about the coming Messiah. Look at verse 15. "The Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from among your brothers, and you must listen to him." He's speaking about Yeshua. There are 2 things to note about this description of the Messiah. Moses said, first of all, that Yeshua be like a prophet like me. Now, how will Yeshua be like Moses? Remember, Moses was a very unique prophet, and out of all of the prophets, he was the only one God spoke to face. The Bible says that Moses saw the form of God and had a face-to-face contact with God. No other prophet had that privilege. And because of this unique level of revelation, when Moses spoke as a prophet, his voice was the equivalent of the voice of God. In the same way, Yeshua would have a face-to-face contact with God the Father. And like Moses, Yeshua could say he stood in the presence of God the Father and received first-hand words of God to share with the people. This is how Yeshua would be like Moses. Yeshua would also be a prophet from among your own brethren. That means Yeshua would not descend from heaven like an angel or an outsider. He would become a human being and be born a Jew. This way, God would raise him up from among his own brethren. And Yeshua fulfilled this prophecy exactly. In verse 17 and 18, we read about it again. The Lord said to me, what they say is good, and I will raise them up a prophet like you from among their brethren, and I will put my words in his mouth, and he will tell them everything I command him. Therefore, Yeshua spoke with such authority. His words were God's words. God the Father had placed in Yeshua's mouth the exact words Yeshua was to speak. And as the people listened to Yeshua speak, and the way he spoke struck them, he carried himself with so much authority, and he differed from the teachers of the day who did not speak with all that much authority. And then Moses proved his authority by casting out an evil spirit out of a man who was in the audience. The people were shocked. They had never seen anyone conduct himself with so much authority. But they shouldn't have been surprised. Moses had predicted that someone would come with an incredible amount of authority, and now Yeshua, the Messiah, was standing in the synagogue before them. The Messiah was supposed to be a prophet like Moses, and because of this, the Messiah's work and life must reflect the pattern set by Moses. You know, there's a midrash that often refers to Moses and the Messiah as the first Redeemer and the ultimate Redeemer. Consider this. Both Moses and the Messiah were born in a time of national bondage. Both Redeemers appeared after Israel waits for generations for redemption. Both Redeemers are destined to break the bondage of Israel and lead her into the promised land. Both perform unparalleled signs and wonders to validate their ministry. Both act in the role of lawgiver and a singular authority of the Torah. Both filled the role of intercessor between God and the nation. And both do the work of reconciliation, renewing God's covenant relationship with Israel when that covenant became compromised. No other prophet reached the level of prophecy that Moses operated. But the book of Hebrews demonstrates that the Messiah's revelation succeeds that of Moses. The Messiah was like Moses because he alone speaks directly for the Father. Now, God had very strong words for those who did not listen to his words. Verse 19 reads, if anyone does not listen to my words that the prophet speaks in my name, I myself will call him to an account. God is talking about eternal judgment in hell. That's how God calls people to account. Therefore, what does that tell us? It is a commandment to listen and obey the words of the Messiah as if it were the words of Moses, and even greater. By calling him a prophet like Moses and instructing us to heed him, the Torah grants his own authority to the Messiah. Shalom. Until this next week's episode of the Nuggets of the Torah. And if this teaching has been a blessing to you, consider subscribing to this YouTube channel.